album is finally out as of yesterday of recording this video. So I waited up till midnight to hear the release as it released onto Spotify. I obviously didn't want to sit up and then listen to the whole album, seeing that it was after midnight. So I skipped through a few tracks, immediately got an idea of what was happening and how all these songs are going to be. The following morning I went and skipped through it again, and then later that day, actually it didn't come out yesterday, it came out 2 days ago of recording this, sorry. So later on yesterday I listened to it a bit more properly. I don't think I got to the end because I got bored. So I've skipped through this thing twice. I listened through to around No Signs of Life, and then I got bored. And I don't feel I need any more listens. I get the album, I understand the album. It's not going to show me anything new. There's nothing new to see. There's nothing else to think about. There is nothing else to this. So, the album. Now, if you take a look at your screen to see the image of the album art, let's take a look at the album art, as well as the title of the album. So, as you see, the title of the album is Worlds Apart. And if you look at the album cover, you have on your left a demon. You have on your right perhaps an angel. On the left again, the demon looks like he's in hell, and on the right it looks like the angel is in heaven. So you've got demon, angel, heaven, and hell. And then the title of the album is Worlds Apart. You would start to think that musically this album is going to have vast differences between the male and female singer. This is a supergroup album. You've got Russell Allen of Symphony X, Adrenaline Mob, and a few other bands which he's stepped his foot in. He does get around a fair bit, but he's known as a fantastic singer. You've got Olzon, who is known for Nightwish. She's done a solo album, and then she is also working at the meantime with a different band who's done 2 albums, but I didn't like it, so I've completely forgotten the name of what band she's in. The guitarist in this band, I don't know his name, but he is known as a fantastic guitarist, and technically he is very, very good. So you've got a supergroup of high athletes in the musical realm, and the way the album cover is presented, as well as the title of the album being Worlds Apart, you would think that Russell is going to be of one realm and it'll be of a different realm. It's going to be 2 unbelievably different contrasts from each other. When Russell sings, it's going to be something enhancedly different to that of what Annette sings. Russell may be very aggressive, his stuff is very loud, full of distortion, and Annette is going to be full of melody, and even when the instruments come in, it's got these sweeping leads throughout. As for Russell, it's just guttural guitar chugs. And maybe they can cross over vice versa, so then Annette can go into that world of the angel within hell and the demon within heaven, and just constantly shift these things, and that sounds to make a very interesting, diverse album that fluctuates from all these different sounds and different prospects, and it seems that the possibilities are endless. So listening to this album is Annette of a completely different world to Russell. As the title suggests, worlds apart. Are these 2 individuals worlds apart? Is the music worlds apart from each other? Is it that vitally different? No. I would probably say the best it gets is basically she's in the other room. if not just at the other end of the room. It's that friggin' close. When they sing together, and Russell finishes his section of the verse, and then it goes into Annette's section of the verse, musically, nothing changes. So how could it possibly be worlds apart when musically and vocally you're both exactly the same? You're not a different worlds because you're always the exact friggin' same. You're on the same goddamn planet and you seem to be of equal minds, therefore it seems that you're just in the same fucking room. You are not worlds apart. And it's not the heaven and hell. Russell always sings in the similar style as Annette when they're doing duets. And even when they take a song that is individual to themselves, musically it still doesn't reflect the strong differentiating elements of the singers. The album tries to keep everything similar and same without going out there, which is weird for the album cover, two completely different sexed singers, and the title of the album. It seems pretty damn thick. Worlds Apart is an incredibly stupid title for this album because it is so fucking wrong. It should be called, if they want to go with this sort of thing, In the Same Room, or Just in the Next Room, or Of Sound Minds, of Similar Minds, perhaps. But Worlds Apart, that's fucking hilarious, because it is so dumb. And if the band really thinks that the album is of completely different worlds because it's so different when Russell is singing to Annette, these singers are goddamn thick. So, the first track on the album, Never Die. This is completely Russell. Now you would think Annette being a woman, she would take a softer side, so this is going to be quite heavy and things. Well, in fact it isn't. It's actually quite melodic. When it gets into the verse, when he sings, he's just completely clean, and it's got this real nice melody about it. There's nothing aggressive, no guttural chugs, nothing like that. There's nothing like that really on the album, to be fair, in fact. So, it's purely clean, and don't get me wrong, I really like this track. When I heard it as a single, Russell, I don't think has ever really sounded better. This is a fantastic performance from him. His voice sounds fantastic. He goes and does his verse, then the chorus. The chorus is like the atypical kind of chorus. The instruments open themselves up, they just kind of bar a note and everything, and don't try to overshadow the singer's performance. And it tries to be a bit more kind of open, a little bit more musical, a bit heightened, and a bit more catchy. And a lot of bands always say that has to be the chorus way, meaning a lot of choruses do kind of sound very similar and you can predict how it's going to go, which means that this chorus is quite predictable and bland. I prefer the verse. After this, you get the exact same verse, and then you get the exact same chorus. You get a solo, and then you get the exact same chorus. And this is where a problem starts occurring on the album, which we'll get into at a later time. But as far as the solo is goddamn amazing, and that is quite persistent for this album. I'll just get this off the bat. The intros to songs, when there's no actual singing going on, the guitarist seems to actually use his talent and his musical creativity to make some very interesting, very catchy, beat orientated, fantastic melodies. His intros are just absolutely goddamn amazing. He is very good. Most of the intros on this album, I would say, are fine. I don't have a problem with them. Some of them can get sort of similar from each other, so one song will have an intro and then immediately following that the intro kind of sounds exactly the same. That's a big issue, but nevertheless the intros are so good that some kind of repeating, you can overlook it to a certain extent. As for the solos, he has insane amount of speed, and it's not just speed for speed, and it lacks a kind of melody to it. Is shredding solos have always got a nice tone to them and a melody, and constantly shift, so it's not just shred and it sounds all exactly the same. It fluctuates, it has its melodies, it has its pullbacks, and then he races even harder and more aggressive, and he really thinks about how to orchestrate it perfectly well. He also does some amazing melodic kind of solos with a bit of like jazz influence in areas, a bit of blues. And because of that, the fact that he has such insane speed, has a great focus on melody, his tone is very nice, and he dips his feet into jazz and blues at times. None of the solos really have a bad aspect. The only thing I can really say is sometimes before the solo he does a build-up that kind of lasts a while, and it's just, I'm not building up anticipation, it's basically just him repeating the exact same phrase over and over and over again, and me getting a little bored. If you want to build up to a solo, then it's in the name of what I've just friggin' said. Build up. Not just stay the same, stay monotone until the solo happens. You need to build into it, and that builds up the anticipation. You're not going to build anticipation from just doing the same chord over and over and over again. It's like, God, I'm getting really excited. It's just like, no. If it builds up and it to the sense of here it comes, because the sound is increasing, it's evolving, it's bubbling up until it explodes into the solo. That is where anticipation thrives from. So that is the only kind of issue I have with the guy. So I'm not going to go track by track, but I'm going to go a few track by tracks just to give you an idea. So as I said, Never Die, Russell takes a melodic side, which technically is bad, but don't get me wrong, he does sound fantastic, because as I said when I did the single, I said the song was pretty good. But again, it was verse, chorus. The rest of the song is repeated besides the fucking solo, which is atrocious. Now let's get into the title track, Worlds Apart. A lot of people preferred Never Die to Worlds Apart, but this is the duet between the two singers. So you get the intro, as I said. Intro is very good. I like the intro. The vocals come, and I think it starts with Russell, I think. And he still has a melodic side to him. He has this melody to him. It sounds nice. Again, he has a good voice, and it sounds nice. And then when Annette comes in, musically and tonally, it's not exactly a shift. She has a brighter voice, so things get a tad heightened. But other than that, it just connects. It doesn't adapt into something new and fresh. It just kind of increases the note to a higher kind of note. But that is mostly Annette. Musically, nothing shifts. I don't think any of the instruments actually change. And if they do, it's not much. So it's just a natural progression. It's not worlds apart. It's just Annette basically takes over. And that's it. And then the chorus they sing together, which basically just means that they're on the same thing. They are of the same mind. Because they're not both vitally different. They are together in unison, therefore not very worldly apart. They're in unison. So that's a little stupid. And then you get the exact same verse again, and you get the exact same chorus again, and then you get a solo, which is perfectly fine, and then you get, that's right, the exact same freaking chorus. So the majority of songs seem to be repeats, not something new and fresh and exciting, and that means that about 3/4 of your song, I've already heard it. It's not new. There's no new ideas. Only 1/4 of your song is fresh and unique, and then you run out of ideas and just rinse and repeat. And then you have the good guitarist actually try and salvage everything, which is what he kind of does whenever he gets a break from these fucking singers. Bit of a problem there, right? Anyway, the verse in songs, sometimes they kind of shift position, so Annette may take lead instead of Russell starting the song in the first verse. Annette will take the first portion, and then Russell will take the second portion. How exciting! So, technically that's not very good. So, what do you think the next following track is gonna be? Who's gonna be singing? So this is called I'll Never Leave You. Now we've had Never Die. This was Russell completely by himself. Then we've had Worlds Apart, which is the duet. So we haven't had Annette really sing by herself. So you'd think, well, probably Annette, but you never know. There's so many songs. It could be Russell again, and then Annette may make up later down the line. No, you're right. It is Annette. It's pretty predictable there. So this is Annette's solo for herself. She has a few. Obviously, it's not just the only one. They have equal amounts of songs. I don't think one has more than the other. I think they are perfectly equal. The lead sounds great. When it comes to the verse, everything shuts out, so it goes melodic again, kind of like Never Die, and kind of like Worlds Apart, which doesn't go too heavy, but it's a bit more up there. It's like a heavy kind of poppy thing. I'll Never Die, I'll Never Leave You. Everything shuts out for Annette. The guitars go, bass for the most part goes. It's just basically a simplistic beat, and everything strips back. And when it gets to the chorus, everything is still stripped back. The guitars do come in, but they really don't try to overpower her at all. I will say, even though instrumentally there's nothing interesting at all about the chorus, vocally Annette does sound very good here. It's probably the best she sounds on the album, this chorus. She sounds fantastic. It has such great kind of highs to her voice, and because of that it has great flourishes. It's really good. But then we get to the similar thing. So what do you think is coming for the next verse? That's right, it's the exact same. What do you think is going to be the chorus? The exact same. Where do you think it's going to go now? Yeah, the solo. And what do you think the solo is going to be? Yeah, it's going to be pretty good. And then where do you think it's going to go? Yeah, pretty much the exact same chorus. See, you haven't heard this. Well, some of you have, but for those who don't, I'm pretty sure you're kind of guessing where this is going with me. And you don't have to even friggin' hear it. It is that fucking predictable. And that is a fucking issue. So the next track, do you think it'll just go back? No, it does change it up. I do believe this is a duet. So they do kind of change it, so it's not just Russell duet Annette, Russell duet Annette, Russell duet Annette. It doesn't go like that, so it's not insanely friggin' predictable. But it's predictable in the way that Russell will never have two songs up on Annette. They'll always equal itself out. So seeing that she's gone, the next one has to be Annette. And then the next one will have to be Russell. Because they never go one more than the other. So you can sort of still predict it. And even when it comes to every single track, it's an interesting intro for the most part. And then you get your verse, chorus, and then the rest of the song is repeated beside that of the solo. So 3/4 of every single friggin' song is a repeat of what you've just heard. There is nothing new. The song doesn't go places. You don't have a massive long epic style of a song. It is all the short round 3-4 minute style of things. And even when they do a duet together, does it ever flourish and change and go down different roads? No, it always flows in. So if Russell starts, it just naturally flows into Annette. Musically, nothing shifts at all. And then the verses are quite predictable. If Russell starts the verse and then Annette takes the second portion, you can kind of predict it's either going to be the same, or the only thing that's going to change is Annette will take the first portion and Russell will take the second portion, so you can even predict that. Because that's as much as they think, well, we need to change it up, let's just move the voices around. And it's very lazy and very thick if they really think that is genius, because that's the typical thing you're going to think. Well, the good thing would be to shift the voices, but you need more than that, but they kind of stop it there. Even I would think that we should probably switch the voices around, but I would put in a lot more effort than just that. These guys don't, because they're thick, I guess. And let's get on to Russell doing solo stuff. In Symphony X, there's a lot of aggression. Like, I don't like him in Symphony X because he does yelling, but he doesn't have to yell to be friggin' heavy. Like, Iron Maiden is heavy, Ozzy has heavy songs, Metallica has heavy shit. They don't yell, they sing. So he can just sing, but musically, and himself, he never tries to go heavy. There's no guttural guitar stuff with Russell. It's always basically everything's melodic, or it's a song that goes to the 80s, which is What If I Live, maybe Lost Soul, which is Russell only on vocals, and it just kind of goes 80s. And it's just like, well, we've heard the 80s, because that was in the 80s. So this is not something new, reinventing the wheel. This is going back years ago and taking what has been done years ago. And then 3/4 of the song is just a re-fucking-peat again, so it's not great. So Russell being this versatile singer where he can go into melodies like Never Die and then goes into the really heavy stuff like Adrenaline Mob and Symphony X, he doesn't. It's very consistent. He always stays very, very clean, very melodic, and musically it never tries to increase the gains to power, distortion, shred. It never does that. It's always clean and open and tries to keep this beauty about it, because he is of equal footing of Annette, who is a female with an angelic voice, and he's trying to mirror it. But look at the album cover. What's the title of the album? It's Worlds Apart. You're not supposed to be mirroring her. You're supposed to be doing something different and giving versatility to the album, because that is what it's called for. No. Every time he gets a lead song, it never gets that much heavier. His stuff is technically heavier than Annette's, but not really. So let's get on to Annette now. So whenever she has a lead song and it comes to the verse, the instruments always strip out. So as I've mentioned, 3/4 of every single song is very repetitive, because it's just basically a repeat. It's only the first verse and chorus that is the new fresh take, and then everything goes on to recycle. But when it comes to Annette's songs, so you have her first lead vocal performance in a song, and then another song comes up. This is a completely different song, so it should be completely different. You shouldn't know what to expect. But every single time, when it gets to her verse, instruments completely stripped down, and she is left completely bare for melody. That then means that I'm now predicting the song before it starts. I can now predict every single Annette lead, because I always know that her verses are going to be incredibly clean and stripped bare as she sings over it, and when it comes to the chorus, the instruments will come back but not overpower her. Now I'm going to get a little sexist here. I'm not a sexist person. I believe heavily in equality, and I think females should have every single right as men do. I'm not the high proper feminist style of thing where females deserve to be better than all of us and I'm a white pig person. I'm white, therefore I'm disgusting because I love racism, as all these feminists do. I'm not like that, but I am proper equality, and I do think women should have every single right and opportunity of that of a man. And men shouldn't idolise women and sexualise them. I am not that person. But I am gonna get a little sexist maybe for a few people. So, Annette, always clean in verses. Now, if you get something like Evanescence, Amy Lee, when it comes to choruses, it goes completely kind of clean. Within Temptation, if you kind of get your verses, it's usually particularly quite clean. When you get any symphonic kind of female in a band, or mostly females in a band, a good about 80% of the population of females in metal, when it gets to a verse, the whole verse always strips out. It's not just here in this album. In Nightwish, they can have the exact same thing, even with Floor as well as Tarja. Usually it strips out. And I'm guessing it's because they're women. That's my sexist statement. I think bands, because my dad mentioned this to me, men have a very powerful distorted voice, and therefore with the distorted guitars they can hold their own. But as for a woman who has an operatic voice and then a band comes in full-blown distortion, shredding like crazy, it's just going to completely drown out the operatic style of singing and melody. It would just be lost under that flood. And also, it's two completely different worlds. If you go in full shred, but a singer is just pure melody and operatic, it doesn't match. It's not going to fit together. They don't go together, so one has to do a compromise. And if the vocalist can't do that, then it has to be the band. So, that's kind of my sexist statement of how metal usually approaches females, which is why I like more male versions, and when I hear a lot of female in bands, I usually shut them down because they always have melodic verses, and then they pipe up a little bit more in choruses, and that is in a lot of female bands. Now, I don't hate female bands. At the minute, I'm listening to a female band, well fronted vocally, that's called Against Myself. I think that band is really, really good. Then the band Solaris, female singer. I like her because she can stand her own. They can keep the gain and keep the power, and Sarah D can hold her own against them. They don't have to pipe down because her voice can't cope. And then you've got Unleash the Archers. Her voice is so friggin' powerful, you can keep that power and aggression. But here, every song, she has to be melodic, and it was kind of the same in Nightwish as well as even in her solo project. I think her solo project, they actually are a bit heavier than this, which means I think Annette can do it. But for some reason, all these singers, which I actually think this sexist way of thinking that women can't do it and they'll be lost, I think a few of them actually underestimate themselves, and I think they can do it. I think they can hold themselves up under a bit more distortion. Maybe not similar amounts, like going to Avenged Sevenfold with all that distortion, all that insanity going on. I think some women will lose out, but I definitely think you could increase it a little bit, for Christ's sake. So, 3/4 of songs, every track, always predictable. Annette, whenever she's solo, everything becomes friggin' predictable. As far as guessing who's singing, if it's going to be a duet or just Russell or just Annette, that becomes quite predictable. Being two complete contrasts whenever they come together, is Russell going to be very heavy, then it's going to go very melodic, or is it going to start melodic and then it's going to progress into this really heavy thing? No. If, when they come together, there's some guitar work and Russell singing melodically, you're going to imagine that when Annette takes over the vocals, it'll be the light guitar work with light vocals. If Annette starts it clean, you can imagine Russell will take over quite clean, because the verse does not differentiate between the two. They are of the same mind, like they are the same person, but have just different voices. It's not worlds apart. It's of one mind. And I think that is a really, really failed opportunity. as well as the song structures as well, always being exactly the friggin' same. It never changes. You get your intro, it's good. You get your verse, which gets very stale and predictable because it's never going to break out of that heavy element. It's either going to be a kind of musical thing but have a nice melody about it, or it's just going to be full-blown melody. It never really escapes that. And then when you get past your second chorus, the rest of the song is going to repeat. The only fresh new thing is the solo, and that's every friggin' track. You can predict who's going to be singing, you can predict how it's going to sound, you can predict it's never going to get that heavy. You can always predict that when Annette takes the lead, all the verses are pure soft and all the instruments cut out, so Annette can actually sing because she's a woman, and the band would drown her out. And it's a shame that that actually is a thing, and I'm not sexist, but that is the way it is. There are so many female-led bands that when it comes to verses, as I say, the band completely strip out because I guess they're a woman. And I hate the fact that that's a thing. I hate that, but that is the fucking way it is. I'm sorry. I don't make the fucking rules. I'm not telling them to do this. That's what it is. There are women out there who can actually stand their own. As I say, I like women in metal when they actually stand their own. And they can go melody like this, but then they can go full-blown aggression and even have more balls than Russell does in this album. Sarah D in Solaris, she's in fucking heavier songs than any of Russell in this album, so technically Sarah has a bigger dick than Russell does. Sarah, if you're watching, I'm sorry that I say you have a dick. And yeah, Unleash the Archers. Fuck me, she definitely has a bigger set of fucking balls than Russell. I think Russell's performance here and then Unleash the Archers, I think Brittany Slays could beat the shit out of Russell Allen. Because she sounds so much more aggressive and menacing than Russell does here. And it's such a shame. Because I wanted different contrasts. I wanted worlds apart. I wanted the demon versus angel, the heaven and hell, or a demon in heaven or an angel in hell kind of aspect. That sounds frigging cool. That sounds great. That is a great idea, a great concept. But no, it's basically just two angels in heaven, technically. There's no demonic kind of thing I hear in this. I don't hear any demonic voice or any kind of hell aspect. All I hear is a female-male angel just doing songs together. As I say, in the same room, but maybe at the other end of the room. So they may have to shout at each other, and that is as far apart as it gets. So, for all its predictability and the fact that Annette has a great voice, but all her fucking solo work is the exact same shit on Recycle, and Russell doesn't even use his versatile voice, and then 3/4 of songs are recycled, and then Annette's songs are all kind of recycled to an extent, and the only great aspect is basically intros are solid, solos very, very solid, and then technically the vocals are good, and it does have a good voice, Russell does have a good voice, but they never really do much with their voice, so it starts becoming stale. If you have good voices off the bat, then you get fed up with them, and then you get good leads and intros, and that's kind of as far as you get. So, rating it, I'm just giving it a 6 out of 10. It is technically just above average. The vocals are fine. The solos definitely go above average. They go way above the solos of most guitarists. And you do have the man and female, so technically there are contrasts, because Anna is going to sound different to Russell, even though they are singing in the same key and musically exactly the same rhythms. She does sound different, but that doesn't mean their worlds friggin' apart. And musically it's exactly the same, they're singing in the exact same key, but she's a woman, therefore she's of a completely different fucking world. No! In this day and age, we're supposed to be saying that men and women aren't that fucking different, but you're saying just because she has a woman's voice, she's completely fucking out there. I'm a man, she is a woman. And because of that, gosh, she's like of a completely different planet. Like, holy hell. Technically, that's sexist. And that's the way they've done it here. The worlds apart in their mind, I'm guessing, is basically the fact that he is a man, she is a woman. And that is worlds apart because they are completely different. A woman is not like a man is not like a woman. They are not the same, they can't do the same things. So, this album is for sexist pigs, I guess. I don't fucking know. It's not worlds apart at all. And it's not interesting, it's very bland, song structures are all exactly the same. It's your intro, your verse, your chorus, and then repeat everything, and then you get your bridge. It never progresses into something else. You don't get a second style of verse. It's always the same verse repeated. The verses never change, chorus never changes. You don't get massive bridge kind of sections. It's just kind of solo work. You don't get anything. It's really, really freaking disappointing. Vocally, when you hear them the first time, that is their performance all the way to the fucking end. Which is atrocious, and its stuff is incredibly friggin' predictable. Russell at least has some differentials, but even then, it's crap, so 6. It's above average because technically both their voices are good, and then you get solos in every track, and the solos are pretty damn awesome. But it's not good, which would be a 7, it's just above average. So if you hear it, it's alright. It's okay to hear it and listen to it. But as far as good and wanting to listen to it on yourself and go out and buy it, I don't think so. If it's played, you'll appreciate it. But as far as wanting to listen to it, I don't see why you would. Because it's not that interesting. And for buying it, it's not worth the money. The best it does is if it's on, you will be fine with it. But you wouldn't waste your own time going out your way to hear it or buy it, basically. So that's it for the review. Sorry it's a little bit long, but I'll try and get my points across as much and in as much detail. My next review is going to be late because it's going to be Trivium's single, which came out a fair while ago. So I've been late to that, but I'm going to be reviewing that next. So if you liked, please stay with me. But if not, then thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time.